Okay, I'm so excited to be back on the podcast. I know it's been a while, but I am here with a very, very special guest to me. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm obsessed with my sister because I talk about her all the time, and I think she's so cool. And she's my big little sister. She's 5.5 years younger than me, the Pisces to my Virgo, and I just think she's the coolest thing ever. And so, to start us off, there's so many things we could talk about today, but I have a little list here. And by the way, this is our first time that I'm recording in video, so I'm a little awkward, a little nervous, but if you can see where I'm filming, I'm currently at this villa in Peru, and Carly's in San Francisco. So, Carly, I was wondering, a lot of people have heard me tell my side of the story about like how we became friends, but what is your take on the story of how we actually became friends?
Yeah, good question. Well, thanks for the kind intro, by the way. You are my biggest hype woman always. And I'm also nervous to be doing this on video, but luckily I can't see myself right now, so hopefully I'm a little less awkward than usual. Let's see, I feel like the moment that we always talk about is kind of when you went through your big breakup, and I decided to say, like, okay, let's start going to festivals and things. But I think honestly, for me, like a pivotal point in our relationship was before that, was when I went through a breakup in Minnesota, and I kind of had no one. I had moved into the city, and my best friend McKenna had just moved away, and I felt really alone and really just like dark and sad. And it was a really tough breakup for me. Definitely a very pivotal moment in my life. And I remember just being so low that like the only people that I had to call were you and mom. And I don't think you and I really had much of a relationship, if any, at that point, but it was really helpful to have both of you talk me through that and just be there for me, truly, like, with support on phone calls and in person, and just like having love from the people that matter the most to me that I hadn't necessarily realized before that point was really important. And I do think still, like, after that phase, we weren't that close just because we lived in different areas. And then I think because we both happened to be in Chicago when your big breakup happened, um, that's when it was really easy to get close because we were so close in proximity to each other. And then we just started doing everything together, and it was so easy, and it was so nice to have a built-in best friend that we could like scream at each other and then cry and make up and then do it all over again and have the best times, and even like, live together on top of each other when we were traveling. So it was, yeah, that was definitely when I think our like best friend relationship formed. But I think the realization that you were always going to be there for me, and you actually could offer good advice, and it wasn't like, competitive all the time or jealous or anything, was probably during my first breakup, which was, I don't know, like over 10 years ago, 10 years ago ish, which is crazy. 8 years
That is
maybe.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I tell a lot of people like we were not always this close, and everything is not always this sunny. Like, of course, what we put on social media and things people see, it's like, oh my God, you guys have a perfect relationship. And I'm like, first of all, it wasn't always perfect. Like the entire time that you were a child and we were growing up together, I was just insanely jealous of you. Didn't realize that until I was older. Just like you coming in and, disrupting my world and taking a lot of the attention away. And I was like, oh my God, who is this person? I could not handle it. But yeah, I just realized I think when you're going through your breakup and you needed me, it felt really good to have a reason to like come together and show that like I could be trusted and I didn't have to be such a bitch all the time. I was like, wow, I could actually be a nice older sister. Like it hadn't even occurred to me. But yeah, I'm really happy that we both went through those really heartbreaking times with boys and it brought us together.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. It's just like a switch almost from having like a super hyper competitive state of we can't possibly be friends because like everything you do, I'm either jealous of or it
Hmm.
bothers me. And like we don't get along at all, just a shifting of like, oh, we're very similar, and actually we are like built in to get along. It's in our DNA. So
Yes, I love
um
that. And on
yeah.
that note, this might take a little bit of thought, but can you put into words something or some things that you've learned through our relationship?
I mean, a lot. I think you've taught me patience in a lot of ways, and as much as I hate when you say like, "Oh, you're just going through life after me 5 years later," it's true in a lot of ways that I've just learned a lot through you, and I'm definitely a person that needs to learn through experience. So, like, even if I hear something from you, I have to kind of experience it for myself. But I think I'm really able to understand things as they happen more clearly, especially when you've gone through like similar situations and when we can talk about things. But I think a big thing is patience. And then another big thing is just like apologizing and admitting like when I'm wrong or admitting when I was going overboard with anger or um, vulnerability, I guess, is a huge part of that too. Just being able to say, like, hey, I'm sorry that I was acting like that, even though it's a really hard phrase for me sometimes, especially with you more than most. Um, so yeah, I think those are like three really big
Mhm.
themes, but patience just like with myself through you because you have a lot of patience with me and you are my biggest hype woman and to love myself as much as you love me is something that I'm always working on and I always remember when Drew told me when I was at Dreamglade and I was having, a session with him and I was emotional, I think, and he just said, stopped me and looked at me and said, "Do you know how much your sister loves you? Like she loves you more than anything in this world." And I obviously got emotional, but I'm like, yeah, it's so true. Like I always feel that from you, and so I've learned to try to love more unconditionally from you as well because I think I give my love with more conditions a lot of the time, and people have to walk on eggshells, especially you around me often, but I learned from you like what that feels like to be loved unconditionally and to be like unconditionally, truly supported um, by someone. Like I can do no wrong, and if I do, like we'll get through it. So yeah, lots of themes, but those are the
Oh
main
my God,
ones.
you're making me cry already. This is like 6 minutes in. I'm like, okay, I'm already crying. This is so funny. But yeah, it is so cool, especially because we're such mirrors for each other. Like all of the things that used to bother me about you, I slowly realized were because I was doing the same things. And it was just really hard to like look at that mirror, especially with the apologizing. I just remember so many of our fights were just like no, like we would say something about the other person, like, well, you're being bitch. No, you're being bitch. No, you start. No, you. And we were like so sure that we were right, and the other person was wrong, and we're like, there's no way I'm apologizing to her. Like I'm totally in the right. And just watching, like, it's almost like I started to be able to observe our fights from more of an outside perspective, just a little bit more removed, and be like, oh my god, everything I'm getting so mad at Carly for is just because I'm doing the exact same things, and it's so that's why we're like butting heads because neither one of us we both wanted to be right so much more than we wanted to have a relationship. And then I was
Yeah.
just like, wait, I don't why do I care so much about being right? And like I'm just gonna be right and miserable. Or I could be like compromising and caring and compassionate and actually have a friend. So yeah, I love hearing all
Right.
that and I learned very, very similar things. It's really cool because I'm like, you're one of the only people that we can still fight. We can still get in like actual fights once in a while. It doesn't happen as much, but even when it happens, I'm not scared that we're never going to be friends, which is, oh, it's so nice. It's that unconditional thing because I think in the past, both of us have talked about our commitment problems, but it's like when I used to get in fights with a friend or a boyfriend, I'd just be like, "Oh, this is over now. Like we just had a big fight. It's over." And they'd be like, "What are you talking about? We just had a fight, but our relationship is salvageable." So I think you have really helped me with that. Just learning how to like argue with someone or fight with someone else in a way that's not like gonna totally ruin the relationship in a way that's like constructive, actually hearing the other person and learning about our styles. Like, I think a big thing with me and you was learning about how I fight and like how you fight. And I don't like that word fight, but like, you know what I mean? Discussions, heated discussions, arguments. But it's like I used to really like to resolve everything right then because I felt this like fear of abandonment. So it's like if we don't resolve this now, like if she doesn't tell me what's wrong, a lot of times it'd be like I could feel something was off with you. I could feel that you were annoyed with me. So I'd ask you what was up and you're like, I don't want to talk about it. Nothing's wrong. And then that would start the spiral because I would feel like anxious and then be like, oh no, she's mad at me. Like, what did I do? I need to make sure everything's okay. And you'd be like, I need space. Like, leave me alone. If you keep talking to me, I'm going to get even more angry. And so it was kind of this like anxious, avoidant, like, uncomfortable dance we were doing until I think you just said to me at one point, maybe we were in Mexico. I feel like we were in Mexico having some wine or something. I don't know. You said something to me that just really helped me. It was like, um, Brittany, like, I can't talk about this when I'm angry. I can talk about it afterwards. Like, we can have a discussion when I'm not feeling these feelings, but when I'm feeling these feelings, I can't have a real discussion. And I was like, oh, it didn't even compute in my head that that's what was going on. I'm like, okay, so she still cares about the relationship. She still wants to be friends, but she just doesn't want to talk while she's angry. Like, cool, totally makes sense. But yeah, it just helped me realize that different people have different styles and we can, like, in a relationship, negotiate and compromise.
And you've been like very
Oh
glitchy. Like
no.
I can't really see you fully, but we'll see what happens on the video recording. And like if not, the audio's
That's so annoying.
fine. We'll see.
Okay,
But
well, we're dealing with technical issues, but that's fine. I'm still enjoying this. I hope you are too.
yeah,
Okay, so I
yes,
want to
me
talk
too.
about some fun things too. First of all, well, you talked about Dream Glade. So for those who don't know, but everyone listening to my podcast probably knows, the Dream Glade is the ayahuasca center I used to work at, and Carly came to visit me. So I wondered if you could talk about, what made you come to drink ayahuasca in the first place, and how your experience was, and then what changed in you that kind of made you want to come back and do it again.
Well, I will start by saying that I booked both of my trips, I think, before I went the first
Oh,
time.
okay.
But because I couldn't take 2 weeks off of work, but I knew I wanted to do 2 weeks with you, so I just scheduled them, I think, apart from each other, which is funny. But um, honestly, the reason why I came was just because you were working there. I didn't do a ton of research on it. I knew that I'm interested and open to exploring, modalities to understanding myself more, becoming more in touch or in love with myself, I guess. And I look back on when I decided to do it, and I can't even really remember. Like I didn't wasn't necessarily seeking it. I was just called to it because I knew that you were there, and I wanted to visit you, and I wanted to see what it was about. And I knew your story and how much it helped you and saved you from everything that you were going through. And I just more so wanted to go because I was just kind of curious what would come up for me, and I wanted to spend time disconnected. And um, when I went the first time, I think the biggest takeaway for me was how amazing the disconnection was. Like I turned my phone off the day that I arrived, and then I didn't turn it on again until I left, and that was amazing. I spent so much time reading and silent and laying and relaxing, and in my normal day-to-day life here, I don't have that, and I crave that for sure. And that was very apparent after the first week. And I did book both trips before I decided to come back a
Okay.
second time. But I think that the second trip I would have booked anyways, and it probably happened as it happened because I had already booked them. But I felt like there was a lot more to tap into after the first time that I was there. It took a long time for me to feel anything. I have a very like hard exterior shell that was also apparent the first time. It was just like really like put a lot of walls up, or like I was kind of blocking myself from feeling things or opening things up, or like um I don't really know how else to describe that. But yeah, it was just hard to let myself fully go and relax
Hmm.
into it. And so I think I needed the extra 3 days to allow myself to do that. And the second time I went, and I can't really, now they kind of all blur together as one, but I do know that the second time I went, I felt more quickly because I was open and like I trusted in the experience and in the process given my experience the first time. And I think the second time just allowed me to like uncover a lot of things that I'm working through, and also uncover that a lot of the things I thought were really problematic or that needed to end, and I was going to go and have some crazy revelation about how I'm not living my life the right way, and I need to follow Brittany's footsteps, and I'm going to quit my job, and it's like this impending doom, and I'm going to break up with my long-term boyfriend because I have some doubts, and doubts are not okay. And none of that happened, and it was kind of just like, yeah, you're fine. Like, you can find ways to make your job more fun. Like, you don't like doing this, but like, just have conversations with people. Like, that's what your job is, and I remember that very strongly, and I was like,
Oh, well, okay.
I
Sorry
don't
that
know.
it cut you off, but basically you were saying,
No,
I
it's
think
okay.
it cut you off right after you said something about like everything you thought it was going to do, or ayahuasca was going to say, like, you should quit your job and get out of this relationship. And it was actually like, no, there's actually ways that you can make your job more fun.
Yeah. Or just like, bearable. Like it's not that big of a deal. Like stop making it such a
Mm.
big deal because right now it's fine and the life that it's giving you is great and you can find ways to enjoy it as you need. And same thing with my relationship. Like I got overwhelmingly positive feedback from ayahuasca about my relationship and, you know, I don't know, with all these fairy tales and Instagram reels and all these things you think you're kind of taught to think that if there are any doubts and it's like, oh, if you're having any doubts, like that's probably not the right person. Like you should just know right away and always and never have any doubts or hesitations about this person. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have that. So I think, ayahuasca gave me some big revelation that like I'm in the wrong job, I'm dating the wrong person. And she was very much the opposite. And it was kind of just like a side thought of the whole experience because my intention was always show me what I need to see. And whenever those pieces would get brought up, it was just like, yeah, you're fine. Don't spend too much thought there. You're actually fine. Like everything's great. You're in a healthy relationship. Like he loves you a lot and your job's great. You're very lucky for the job that you have and the flexibility that you have and the lifestyle that it can support. And so yeah, that was like I think I didn't leave with a ton of like, wow, this is a crazy revelation. Besides a few like painful nights, one about the initial breakup that I had, and I guess I just didn't realize the gravity that it was, that it had on my life. Like it was weighing a lot on me and it enacted in the way that I handled situations and relationships and commitments and everything. Um, so that was interesting. And I spent a lot of night like kind of mourning that and reliving it and understanding maybe why I had some of the patterns that I had and some of those avoidant tendencies. Um, Coming from like being so anxious in that relationship, I kind of just shut everything else off. And then also just my body image issues were a huge piece of what I learned and what was like causing me pain. But I also had some crazy, I just remember Stacy and Drew, they always give the speech with when you're at the center, they would always give the speech that you don't want to try to release anything. Like you just have to just accept everything and feel it, right? And that's the only way that it will leave you if it's supposed to leave you. But like, don't place the emphasis on releasing or like it leaving you. Just accept it, and then whatever happens will happen. And I think for me, I was so focused, even though I thought that that's what I was doing very consciously. I was like, I am just feeling this, but I wanted to let it go so badly, like this feeling of like not liking my body and thinking about my body all the time and thinking about what I'm putting into it and thinking about how it looks and thinking about how my thighs look, my face looks, and just like this obsession. I was just like, oh yeah, okay, I feel that. I understand where this pain in my stomach is coming from. I want to let it go. But there was so much emphasis on like, I want to let it go. I want to let it go. And I couldn't purge that night. And that was really painful. And I realized that I'm not ready to let that go. Like that's still a part of my life and something that I'm working through. And it's not just that easy. I'm not just going to go down there and be like, oh, actually, I love myself now. I love my thighs and my nose is perfect. And, it doesn't happen like that. And I've recognized, and it was kind of funny when you have that realization of like, yeah, this is your life's journey. I mean, this is a huge piece of it. This is something that you're like unlearning everything that you've been taught through media and everything for your entire life and who you're comparing yourself to. And now it's just trying to reprogram, which doesn't happen overnight or in one ayahuasca ceremony or in six, but it was still really impactful. And I think the most work that happened to me was like that ayahuasca did on me was really afterwards. I just feel like my life really changed since the first time I decided to go down there and, for a million reasons, but I'm just more or less of a chaotic roller coaster human now. I'm just more like a stable, I know it makes me happy. I'm able to set more boundaries than I was before. And yeah, I just feel like more grounded as a human and less obsessed with external validation and yeah, a lot. I just think I'm a much better person now than I was when I went down there originally,
Same.
and in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I just love hearing that. I mean, there's so much to unpack there, but I think a lot of people can definitely relate with a lot of what you're saying. But first of all, you're 28 years old, right? That's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just remember Stace, a lot of times when people were in their 20s, he would just be like, "Yeah, that'll just go away with age." And that kind of bothered me as a response because I was just like, dude, like you just want these people to wait until they're older to get rid of their problems. But I do think about some of this stuff is kind of true, like especially the body image stuff or the worrying about what people say about you or how they'll think about you or external validation. A lot of that does just stop. Like not completely, not permanently, whatever. But I feel like your 20s are a lot about that. And so I think maybe you not being able to like purge up what you wanted to purge up or let go what you wanted to let go. Yeah, it's totally fine. It's just not time yet and maybe you will one day, maybe you won't need to. Maybe it'll just like slowly fade away into the background, your need to be perfect or liked or whatever, but I really do think some of the stuff just getting older helps with that. And sometimes it's like nothing you need to do, but I do think with the body image stuff, it's really tough. I mean, I see that all the time. A lot of women, but also honestly, a lot of men, a lot of guys too. I think they just don't talk about it as much or they're not like aware. But yeah, it's just that's been one thing that's always been crazy. Again, you as a mirror for me is like everyone who knows you or meets you is just like thinks it's so crazy that you would pick apart your appearance in the ways that you do. And it's like this body dysmorphia, like, or face dysmorphia, or like whatever it is. It's basically you're not seeing you. Like you're seeing some distorted version of you that's not like in the rest of our reality. And it's just so wild to me and really sad. And also makes me angry because it's just our society. That's just like, oh, like you said, it's everywhere. When I go back into American culture, it's just like even the TV shows, everyone's plastic now. Like their noses are fake, their hair's fake, they have extensions, everything's like they've probably got million procedures on their face, whether it's surgical or cosmetic or like actual plastic surgery. I don't know. There's so much going on. But oh, we should talk about Botox because I haven't talked about this on the podcast yet. But it's such a funny one because I think when I was in my 20s, I was like, oh yeah, I'm really self conscious about my forehead wrinkles. I would just feel so much better if I got Botox. And I had friends who were getting Botox and it looked amazing, honestly. Like their foreheads didn't move, they didn't have any wrinkles. And I was like, yes, that is the move. So, and also when I was making a bunch of money, I could afford it. So yeah, I started getting Botox and kind of regret telling you, like, oh my God, it's such a good idea. You should do it because looking back, I'm just like, oh, like that was not a great move on my part. But it's really rough out there because I think in our generation, it's like there's like a few sides of me and a few parts of me, which I'm sure there are in you too, right? It's like there's this one part that really wants to be totally accepting and loving, like every part of me just as it is. And I'm like, oh, I just want to be able to see my wrinkles as like these beautiful, like things that show that I've aged and it's this, honor to be aging. And so all the wrinkles on my face are beautiful. And sometimes I feel like that, but a lot of times I'm just like trying to like massage them away or like put creams on or like wrinkle patches because there's still a part of me that's like, but when I get wrinkly, I won't be hot. Like no one's gonna like me. Like I think it's just this ultimate problem of we're afraid to age. Like especially women are afraid to age, and it's so insane because it's inevitable. It's like being afraid of like the air. It's like it's all around you. It's happening every second. Like it's just beating our heads against the wall. But yeah, I don't have like a great answer for this one because I can't be like, "Oh, I hate Botox, never do it. It's a horrible solution," because I used to do it and I loved it. And sometimes I still think about doing it. Like I don't do it, but I think about it because I'm like, "Oh, it'd be so nice to just have a smooth, youthful forehead." But um I think I told you right about Raoul and ceremony one time. Yeah,
Yeah, like feeling your forehead or noting that there was an energy off
yeah,
about your forehead.
absolutely.
I know that's
I
stuck
was
with me
sitting
a
in front
lot.
of him during my personal healing, and he just starts like going like this up my forehead, and just like moving, and I'm like he's moving stuff around. I'm like he's moving my Botox. Like those are the places where I got Botox like a few weeks ago, and he probably sees this as like this toxic thing that he's like trying. He's like, what is that? Let's clear that out. And I haven't gotten Botox since then because it just disturbed me. I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm doing all this plant medicine work, and then I'm trying to love my body, and I'm putting like poison into my skin because I don't want to age. So I'm like, I think someone has to do it. People in our generation, if we want change, we have to be the ones who just have wrinkles. Do you know what I mean? Like, we just have to do it.
I know. I wonder, I think it's really gonna change. Maybe it's like Gen Z that changes it, but it's a crazy thing. I have so many thoughts on that because I'm like the biggest, I ride that roller coaster probably higher and lower than anyone with like I am, on top of spiritual. I remember sitting out there and telling Sasha like a couple of weeks ago, like, oh yeah, it's official. I'm never gonna get Botox again. And then like a week ago I was like, fuck it, I'm getting Botox. Like this is it. This is the lowest of the lows. I have to do it. So yeah, it's so cyclical and it's so dependent on what I'm looking at, who I'm with, like what shows I'm watching, if I'm
Mm.
disconnected, like when I'm on a backpacking trip or when I'm on a ayahuasca retreat, of course I'm like, oh, I'm so amazing as I am. I look, beautiful. Who cares? There's no mirrors, of course, so I'm not like analyzing every inch of my face like I am like 50% of my day usually. And I like not having access to that and not also comparing myself to other standards is like if we didn't have any of that, I wouldn't feel any type of way about a wrinkle on my forehead or about a little bit of jiggle on my thigh or about like stretch marks of cellulite on my butt or my hips. It's like all of these things are just because there have been like painted unrealistic pictures of what perfection is, quote unquote, when it's like it doesn't even exist for the most part and nobody even wants that. Like when you watch these shows and you watch Love Island and they all look the same and they look like Bratz dolls, like their noses are getting smaller, their eyes are getting bigger, and their lips are getting bigger, and it's just like what is going on? When I see that I'm like, okay, I don't want any of that, obviously that's clear. But then I'm doing the same thing, and for 2 years I gave up Botox, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna like massage my forehead. I'm watching all these tutorials, and I'm like just obsessively massaging my forehead, like, oh my God, this wrinkle's not going away. Okay, it's staying. And it's like, it's something that I'm thinking about all the time because it's just whatever thing it is, it's always one of those body image issues. And it was the forehead for so long. And I'm like, you know what? If I could just fucking get rid of that one fucking wrinkle and it's going to make me that much happier, even though it goes against everything that I stand for. And all of the ads on my Instagram when I open it are like, Botox is poison. Here's this like pure substance. And I'm like, yeah, fuck it. This one thing, like, I'll do it because it made me so unhappy to see. Remember, Costa and I just went on a like 5-day backpacking trip, and I was looking at photos of us, which I should be looking back at those with like, oh my God, how fun, how cute. I'm just like peeing on a log in this video. And the only thing I can notice is just my furrowed eyebrow. And that video, I swear to God, is what made me be like, I'm doing it. I don't care. I have to get it. Even after I just told Sasha, like, I am, natural queen now. I'm never getting that again. That was an old version of me. But I mean, it's so all consuming. And again, if I didn't have to be around cameras, if I didn't have to be around mirrors, if I didn't have to like focus on any of that, then I would be
Hmm.
fine. But the bottom line is that's just a world that we live in, and I'm not proud of the fact that I get Botox. If I could tell anyone not to get Botox, like I would 100% recommend that route if you can. But the amount of people that have told me I have strong forehead muscles is also like nobody should tell you that. Even if you go in to get Botox, like nobody should be like,
Right.
whoa, you have really strong forehead muscles. Because, like, come on, that's the one muscle that you don't want to be
You're like,
really that
thanks, I
strong.
work out.
And I've been told that probably like 15 times. Yeah, I'm like, okay, yeah, shut it down. It's fine. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I'm back. I'm sure, like, I already feel a little bit like, ugh, why did I do that? But at the same time, I'm really glad that I don't have that wrinkle and I don't have to look at it anymore. But I'm sure it's going to be the same thing. It'll be like every couple of years, I'm like, oh my, I can't believe I used to do that. And then I'll be like,
Yeah.
I gotta do it. I gotta do it again because I can't stand it because I have to see this and I have to like judge it so much. And I think the work is like why I go to ayahuasca retreats or like why I'm doing hypnotherapy or all these things. The work is really, it's all just like inside. The more you can, as you've been working on for years and years, like just accept
Just accept.
whatever is going on with your body, with your mind, yourself, and love it, then like you're fine. But that is truly the hardest thing in the entire world. And especially in this world that I'm living in every day, in this rat race
Hmm.
in Silicon Valley. You know, it's like it's hard. It's really hard work. And kudos to the people that are doing it and that are saying no to Botox and that are saying no to all of these trends and like, you know, caring what people think about them. But I think there's still a long journey in front of me to not caring what other people think or specifically just accepting myself. Because I think a lot of it's mostly about like how many people would notice a forehead wrinkle in that video?
No.
Like no one, but I'll notice it
Hmm.
every time. And that's enough to make me go crazy because of how I am and how I judge myself. But yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing that I always am trying to work on is judging myself less so that in turn I can judge others less and just love more,
Yes.
which is it's hard.
Amen. I think it's so much about, I mean, there's so much you said we could talk about, but yeah, it's so much about the judging and like starting with judging ourselves and then that rippling out into judging others because like even for
Mm.
me, yeah, the forehead wrinkles like kind of annoying, but it's almost a subconscious thing where I'm just like, "Oh, I wish this wasn't getting so strong and I'm looking old," but I'm not really like thinking about it that much, but I will get like this morning when I'm sitting up and meditating in bed, and I just look down and I'm like, oh, my butt is like growing. It's getting bigger than usual. I have some like dimples and some stretch marks that aren't normally there, or like they're there, but I don't see them when I'm skinny. And it's just these little intrusive thoughts that are just so fucking annoying because like you said, if we grew up in nature, if I grew up in Peru with a lot of people who are living like with the land and in a more natural setting, I wouldn't have those thoughts. I wouldn't be like, ew, what's wrong with my ass? It's just like a little stretched out and wrinkled. Like, no one would think that. It's like, of course, asses have dimples and stretch marks. Like, you're getting bigger and then you get smaller. And then it's like, it's not like gross, but for some reason, I have this like judgmental voice in my head that I think we've talked about before. But it's just, I think the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'm like, okay, it's not that that voice has disappeared and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just only loving voices now. But it's just that I don't really pay much attention to it anymore. Like I just don't give it that much like airtime in my mind. I'm just like I just hear that thought and then I kind of move on instead of I think when I was in my 20s, yeah, when I was probably your age, it was just constant all the time, never giving up. And I think honestly, it's like you said, it's a huge part of our culture. It's a huge part of our society. We're just constantly bombarded with these messages like, you're not pretty enough. You're not skinny enough. You don't look young enough. You're going to be unlovable if you get old. You're going to be unlovable if you get like all of these things. And it's just,
And you're unlovable if you don't buy this and this and you don't have like these boots to go with this outfit because those boots are last season and you
yes,
can't wear those anymore or people will laugh at you.
yes,
Like it's all of that. It's like buy this, do more, buy
yes.
more, do this to your face, fix that.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do all of this, you're gonna be ugly and unaccepted and no one's gonna like you and you're gonna have no
Yeah.
friends.
And then it's like, so buy our product. It's on sale. And you're like, this is
Yeah.
so fun.
You're like, fine, like I accept. I'm gonna buy it. Like I don't even it works so much of the time. That's why I've really distanced myself from social media and I still have it's totally programmed. Like it doesn't matter if I'm on social media or
Mm-hmm.
not. I think about it now. It's the voice all the time. And I mean, you've obviously done so much more work than the average person to quiet that voice. Most people don't have like the resources or the ability to do all of the work that you've done, like such deep work to quiet that voice. So it's just, you know, for us normal folk living in the matrix still, it's hard
Yes.
to quiet that. But again, like it's just all of this work that you do just to be aware of the
Mm-hmm.
voice and then be like, that's a bitchy that's a bitchy person. Like I don't need to listen to that person. I would never talk to my friend like
Yes.
that. That's a very mean person and not identifying, associating with it, just like observing it and then later be able to like quickly notice, oh, that's just a voice being a total bitch again. It's not me. It's not like me actually judging
Right.
myself.
It
If that makes
does. And
sense.
I think too, another thing I've learned, because when you're talking, I'm like, yes, yes, I have done a lot of work on myself, but it's crazy when I go back home, like when I go back to the States, how quickly I get sucked into all these things. And it's kind of like, I mean, it's a big reality check, but it's also like a big slice of humility. As I like to say, a big slice of humble pie because, I could be here in Peru and be feeling really good. And like, oh, I'm wearing like thrifted clothes and I put oil on my body in a loving way, And then I go back to the States and I'm like, I just want to buy everything all of a sudden. Like, it's just this weird, like, energy vortex that I feel like I'm like in the middle of a tornado just getting sucked into capitalism. And I'm just like, oh, I think I need like 6 things from Amazon. I think I just want to go to Target just to like walk around, just to see what they have, like just to see what I need. And it's like, what? Like, what's happening? So it feels like I've been hijacked. So I think what I've learned from living in Peru and going back to the States and yada yada is just not to judge so harshly, because I feel like, 7 years ago or whenever I came down to Peru the first time, I went back so judgmental of my old self and also everyone living in the
Mhm.
Matrix. And I was just like, what is wrong with you guys? Like, everyone needs to wake up and love themselves and love everybody else and stop with the judgment.
Oh my God, I have to, yeah, interject at that too, because when Brittany first came back from Peru, like I was just actually telling Danny and Sasha this. I was like, it's crazy because they're asking how much you drink ayahuasca now and everything, and I'm like, yeah, it's crazy to normal people to like normal quote unquote to understand like what you're doing and how you're doing that. And I'm like, it's crazy how grounded you are now because that time, and this is the reason I interject, was hilarious. Like when you would come back and you were so floaty. We would talk about floaty people, but like you were floaty and you were just so unaware. Like you would join a conversation and you would come up to my friends of
Oh God.
friends that like I didn't even really know, you didn't even really know, and just immediately go like, so do you actually love your girlfriend? Do you actually love your boy? Like are you really happy? Like blink twice. It was just like immediately deep, like no pleasantries, and just like, what are you guys doing in this world? Like you must be unhappy because you're living here. It was wild. It was so
Oh,
crazy to like see that, but also now I think the reason I talk about it is because yeah, you've come so far, and I think the fact that you're not judging people is more apparent now, and I think you are so grounded now that you have, like, of course you still have the temptations and the like immediate illness that when you walk into this country it's like, oh, here's, like, you find yourself on Amazon ordering 5 things that you're like, oh, I didn't know that I needed any of this, for sure. But I also just think you're able to balance both worlds more easily now, and you're very grounded
thank you.
in who you are.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, yeah, that's like so cringy to reflect back on. I'm just like, oh yes,
It was
I
a
did
crazy
that. Like,
time.
it's so, like, apologies to anyone who knew me during that time. Apologies to you. That was so embarrassing.
The integration is so hard from between the worlds. Like it really is. I mean, I understand like how I've only done it, 6 times, and both times after the 3 times I came back being like, whoa, like there's a lot of judgment for people in the regular world. Like even when you're on medicine, there's no
Hmm.
judgment and you're like, oh, I love it. I understand everyone. I love it. But then when you actually go back and try to integrate, you're like, what the fuck is going on here? Like people are just drinking so that they think that they're getting closer or like more friendly with each other when in fact like no one's aware of what anyone's saying to each
Yes.
other. Like they're everyone's just kind of having conversations with themselves, and so there was a lot of like judgment on the way that people live here. But so I can't imagine you coming back after doing it for so long, just coming back and being like, everyone's in prison, like everyone must be so unhappy, let's talk about
Right.
it. But it's just like no one's really ready to talk about that unless they're at your retreat center, wanting to talk about
Yeah, everyone's
it.
like, I'm
So
just fine, thank you,
that
you
was funny
insane
time.
judgmental hippie freak.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was extra funny too
Yep.
because I think I was really trying, like, I was really trying to help people. I wasn't trying to, like, be on my high horse or think I'm better than everyone else, but, like, that's kind of what I was doing. Looking back, I'm like, yeah, I had genuine intentions. Like, I was trying really hard to bring everything I learned to, like, every conversation I had, and I acted like every time was of the essence, everything is sacred, we need to like act now to change the world. And it was just like, yeah, it was a little chaotic. I just remember thinking back to some of those parties and being like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. But yeah, I appreciate what you said. Like, I got to give myself some grace because it's easy to just like go right onto that shame, shame train station. I'm just like, yeah, that could go deep, but I got to give myself some grace because I was trying and it was really fucking hard to come back to the States after living in the
It was part
jungle.
of your journey too. Like I feel like you had to be there to like come back to
Yes.
this place of empathy and less
Yes.
judgment, and you know, again just like being really centered. And I think you kind of have to go through both to be like, wow, I
Yes.
understand both sides. Like I understand how it could have gotten there and have empathy for
Yes.
yourself, but also like I also understand that a lot of people aren't in the same place as me, or like haven't come to the same realizations and are still
Yeah.
just living their
Yeah,
lives, avoiding certain things, and that's
totally. And they're
fine.
on different paths. Like maybe they have absolutely no interest in healing, and that's totally fine. Like, who am I to say that everyone needs to follow? Like, I even did that to you, which is what you
Right.
said a few times, where I'm like, oh, yeah, you're just like following behind me, which is just so self centered and egotistical of me to say. But I think I was just also, that was a little bit of jealousy from me because I felt like I'm always blazing this trail for myself and for a lot of other people. That's how I felt back then. And it was very like, it was a lot. It was a lot to handle. I was like, can't I just have someone who I can like look forward to and be like, oh yeah, that path looks nice. I'm gonna do that. But there just wasn't anything like that. I just felt like I was like hacking away with a machete in the universe. Just like, am I like, why am I, why am I alone here? I don't feel like that anymore. But I remember that's how I felt back then. So yeah, definitely a lot of jealousy for you being able to like see my mistakes and grow from them. I was like, that must be nice to have someone leading by an example, even if it's like something you don't want to follow.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I think that you did do that. I mean, with a lot of judgment from everyone else in the real world, like again, the real world, but lots of judgment from family and friends and everything when you try to forge your own path that's different because people are either jealous of it or scared of it or intimidated by it or whatever the reason is. You receive a lot of flack for forging your own trail. And so not only is it hard to do it, but then it's also hard to like defend it all the time and exhausting, I'm sure. So I
Thank you.
understand.
But not, I don't know how this got to be about me, but thank you. Yeah, I'm like, let's turn it back to you. So I want to talk more about your relationship with Costa too, because it's something so cool that I have loved watching your relationship develop as like a romantic partnership and just as friends, but also I think watching you navigate all of this has really helped me learn about um, how we deal in relationships. I know me and you are different, as we've talked about already, but we're also really similar in the fact that we were raised with parents who were not great at like communicating, not good at coexisting. They just really didn't get along. Let's just put it that way. And I think that we've talked about this before, but it's like that has led us to some commitment issues because we haven't seen like a relationship where we're like, oh yeah, that looks good. Like a romantic relationship where you're like, oh yeah, that's why I would want to be in a partnership. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen that modeled. We haven't seen examples of that, which led us, I think, both to being like pretty scared of commitment and that, you know, coming out in different coping ways. But I just want to ask you like how you feel about maybe what you've learned. So tell us a little bit about like the relationship you're in, how long you've been in it, and how it's grown and how you've grown throughout that time.
Yeah, I think I like talking about it because I think there's again like that unrealistic narrative that everyone has that if you have any doubts, like get out and you should know right away. And like we even have some friends that's like, oh, the first time I saw her, I knew. And that like puts a picture in everyone else's mind that that's just what it has to be like, and that's what it should be like. And anything less than that, like don't settle for that. Um, and that is just so absolutely not the case at all. I think that there are situations where that happens, and that's awesome. Like, more power to those couples and those people that just knew when they knew and seemingly never have issues. But to me, I'm just like, I'm a realist and I'm chaotic. Like, I'm up and down all the time. And, things change, people change. And being in a long term relationship, like, this is the longest relationship I've definitely ever been in. Um, it's tumultuous, like to say the least. There's just different phases of you, different seasons of life, and going through that together, like you either kind of grow together or you grow apart, and both are fine. But to think that there's never going to be doubts or hesitations, like, is so wrong. But an overview, like we've been together for quite some time. Like we've known each other for 5 years now. I think like 5 years and a couple of weeks, which is crazy. And we've been in an open relationship and like sort of long distance for most of our relationship. Because me and you were traveling a lot. And when, I guess, starting at the beginning, like when I first met Costa was when I was in San Francisco, and COVID happened. And it was like very quickly from a casual relationship to a like marriage. This is like the person in your circle, especially in San Francisco. Like, you can't leave that circle. You hang out with the same people. And he had just moved back to San Francisco from Salt Lake City, so he didn't have a ton of friends in the city at that time. So we were just like very much, always together. And I was still like a little avoidant at the time and just pretty toxic. I love to like, I'm a Pisces, so I fall in love really easily, and but it's like lust, and I'm all in for that moment, and it feels good. Like novelty feels good, and love and infatuation feels great. That's absolutely a toxic trait of mine, but I did like love bomb him a little bit, with like coming on so strong, and then when he was just being like a really amazing human and boyfriend and like a lover. He's a romantic too. Like he's a serial dater. I'm kind of the opposite. Um, it was like too much, and I started to get like the ick and just like okay, it's too much. Like I'm over this, and I kind of was in that space for too long. I let myself be in that space for too long before I actually have the courage to end things. This is a theme in my life too, just like side tangent. I think I've learned this lesson a lot of times, but I have a really selfish reaction to like holding on to things for too long because it's so hard to let them go for whatever reasons. But it's obviously selfishly motivated at the end of the day. But in this case, kind of dragged it on for too long. Weren't in a good spot anymore. I finally was like, look, I can't do this anymore. It was really heartbreaking to see him go through that, but I almost was like a complete like ice queen and very cold about the situation because I had let it go on for way too long that I had like nothing left. I was just like cold inside. Um, so we ended, and then I don't really exactly remember it. I think both of us would love to tell this story differently, but I think I messaged him when Emily Mitchell, one of our friends, was having her birthday party, and I like you were going with Paul, and I think everyone was kind of bringing their person, and it had been a while since I had seen Costa, and he did give me like all the space I needed. He wasn't reaching out or being creepy or psycho or anything during the time period like after we had broken up, and so then we reconnected at Emily's thing, and then Pete's also was having some party, maybe like a going away party or something after that, his cousin in Tahoe. And so we went up there together and we took mushrooms and had just had like the most amazing night. I was like, we were cuddling under the stars on this mattress on the balcony. And I was just like, actually fell in love with him at that point, versus like, whatever it had been, my love bomb previously. Um, and there were some like events within that time period that sucked, like your boat party and other things, that were like tragic, and the way that I was treating him was horrible. But I think for some reason, like something switched, and I think a lot of my baggage was around like not wanting to let someone love me that fully, maybe because I was just scared of it being like ripped away from me, or not being ready for it because I wasn't ready to commit to someone. And anyways, fast forward, I think like that we kind of rekindled right before you and I moved out of San Francisco and decided to travel. And so him and I were just, talking and seeing each other from time to time. He came to visit in Mexico, and I would come to visit in San Francisco and stay with him. And it was great. And I think the fact that we got to have like a really slow introduction into our real relationship versus the like COVID companion living together all of the time was huge. And honestly, I love him more now than like I ever have. Been like a gradual incline, and in the most amazing way. And I think him and I would just say it's just a series of like falling in love with each other and going through hard times and like going through ruts, and then finding each other again and falling back in love each other and with each other. And it definitely wasn't like, oh, I love at first sight, we know like this is going to be it forever. It was like tons of questioning on his side, I'm sure, just like what am I doing with this cold-hearted biatch, and on my side just like I don't know about him, like I don't know if he's the right person. I have a lot of doubts, and I don't know how he is around my friends and all of these things. But yeah, I mean, now we're great. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that we communicate, we talk about everything, like every single thing that happens, we talk through it in depth. And we're not on each other's, like, we don't see each other that often. I leave for bouts and I travel, and we get to miss each other, and he works in a kitchen, so he's working long hours. And there's a lot of time for us to miss each other and to realize how much we love each other. And I think that's huge for me and for him. Like, we're both pretty independent people, and we both actually need a lot of our own space. But coming back to someone where, again, like, that they love you unconditionally and you can get through literally anything because you've gotten through everything. There's like nothing more that, you couldn't get through, right? And I think a big part of our relationship is like, yeah, you can call it open relationship. It's also just like realistically, if anything happens, we can talk about it and we can get through it. Like there's no black and white lines in our relationship. There's no like, if you do this, we're done. Because there's so much love there that would just be stupid. Like we can handle any situation as it comes. And if we start to grow apart later in life, then we start to grow apart. But I think we decided that, you know, being committed to each other for this long is like we're willing to put in the work that it takes to continue to fall in love again. Like, and we're, you know, sometimes we'll get into ruts where like it's not going that well, and then we find ways to communicate through it and like come back to each other and do it all over again. And I think that's the most beautiful part of it all. And I think the reason I think it's a fun story to tell, and there's way more to it, but it's just that like it's not rainbows and butterflies all the time, but like we love each other so much, like so deeply, and more than I could ever have even imagined, being so like obsessed with someone after this long, you know. So I think it's amazing. It's hard work. It's like tough at times, but it's
Oh my
amazing.
gosh, I just love that so much because, like I said, I think you're teaching me a lot. Sorry, I'm sitting on the floor. I'm trying to get comfortable, but you're teaching me so much, even just through what you said. I love hearing you explain your whole relationship since the beginning. It's kind of easy to forget about certain things along the way. I'm like, oh yeah, it used to be like that. And I think I give you really bad relationship advice. Like, I'm happy you said I give good advice. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes I do, but about relationships. And I've started telling this to other friends and guests at our ayahuasca retreats too. I'm like, I don't know if I give great relationship advice. Like, I trust myself with other pieces of advice and other parts of like life on earth. I give great advice, but in terms of romantic relationships, like you've learned so much, and I am so proud of you. Like hearing you talk about all the things and all these like places where you've come up against a wall or an edge, and it could have been the end, but you kept going, and it's really cool for both of you. Like it's cool that you both put up with each other, and like there was a part of you that wanted it to work, and I think I was one of those people that was telling you like, I don't get it. You kind of need like to know, like when you look at someone, you should just know that they're your soulmate and just fall madly in love. They should be so sure that.
Also, I think there's wind on
Oh
your
shit.
thing. You should take your microphone and just like hold it by your face maybe, because you're going a little bit windy
Oh no, I'm
sometimes.
going windy. I wonder if I could put it over
But,
here.
but that's much better.
Okay, maybe I'll just kind of come
That's better.
inside.
Um, but no, yeah, I mean, I don't, I want to also caveat that with like another really big lesson that I learned, and I see this all the time in people that are just like me, and it bothers me, and I'm like, wow, it bothers me because that is me, and that's how I always was, and like even being here and talking about him like this is a little bit uncomfortable for me. Like it's hard for me to give compliments. It's hard for me to like say that I love someone in like a public setting or even just speaking it. It's just like those emotional conversations, like, I mean, you're a words of affirmation, and it's really hard for me to give that. Like when you get a compliment from me, it means a lot, because it's for some reason like it's so hard for me to get there with this exterior that I have. But um anyways, the reason I was saying that is because I don't think it's your fault that, you gave me the advice to like, I don't know, you have all these doubts, like you should probably not be with him. Like I think he's just maybe like, this is another hurdle you have to get over, just like all of, lots of other themes in your life. And you need to step out of that in order to like step into yourself or where you want to go. And I think I was telling everyone that. Like when you talk about the person that you're with in a way to other people, that's like you're playing it down, or like you're embarrassed by it, and you're like poking at them all the time, is not cool. Like it's not, no one wants you to be with someone where you're like, oh, like, I don't know, he's embarrassing me. Like it's when you're trying to put on this facade of like too cool, it doesn't come off well to anyone. And then the closest people to you are like, it's just there's a story with Brittany's ex and Costa, where like I would always think that the way that he acted was so different in front of that person, and that like grossed me out, embarrassed me, and then I would like really build that up and talk about that, and um none of that shit mattered at all. And honestly, like I couldn't feel more different about it now. Like I mean, he's grown a lot. Let's also preface it with that, with like the person that he is now, I love so much. And like I just think I've learned a lot to like, don't talk about your person like that. And if you are tempted to, like, if you actually feel that way, then evaluate the
Mm.
relationship and let them go, because you shouldn't be not hyping your person up to your friends. Like, if you're dating someone, you should be in your friend circle being like, I fucking love this person. They're so good to me. Like, I love the way that they make me feel. Sure, you can be realistic about like little ticks or quirks that bother you because, of course, so many things are going to bother you. Like, I could talk about, the way that he snores or the way that whatever happens, like, that's fine. But I shouldn't just be talking about him like negatively in the sense of like that I don't fully love him when he's not around or like to my friends or to my sister because if I actually feel like that, then reevaluate the relationship and get out of it. And then that's good advice, right? But if I don't actually feel like that, then you need to be vulnerable with people. And if you actually do like someone, you need to tell people that because it's a horrible look to be constantly like shitting on someone to feel like, I don't know, maybe it makes you look better or cooler in some way. And I was absolutely guilty of that always. Just always played everything down. It's like, no, if you actually like someone, it's okay to be like, I actually really like him and fuck what anyone else thinks. Like if he's actually embarrassing you or if you think that he's acting weird in a situation, let him act weird in a situation. If you love him, like love him. Go all in on that. Don't act like, oh, I don't know, like he's embarrassing me. It's just I don't know. I don't know how to word that
No, I
properly,
love
but
it.
I see that in other people now and I'm
That's
like,
so cool. And
it's
it's
not a
so
good
hot
look.
and it's so confident. If someone's just like, if other people are talking shit about their partner and they're like, okay, whatever, he's my partner and I love him. Like, if they just don't give a shit about what anyone else says, and of course there's a line because, like you said, I think it is important to get advice of the people or opinions of the people who are closest to us because sometimes they can see stuff that we can't see if we're in our little, like, especially when it's the other way around, I think, when people have these, like, rose colored
Yeah,
glasses on and they're like, this person can do no wrong. I don't understand. And everyone else around them is like, okay, you might want to reevaluate this. Like, he sucks. Like, I
totally.
don't see any redeeming qualities. But I didn't feel that about him. It was never about him as a person. And we talked about this too. It was always about how you talked about him. And so I love everything that you said because it's so funny to think about it this way. But I think you were almost in that relationship how my ex was with me. And I think that was such an uncomfortable mirror for me to see because I'm like, okay, like I know he likes me, like behind closed doors, he says he loves me and like everything's great. But I'm pretty positive that he's just like acting like it's not a big deal with his friends and he's probably like he doesn't talk me up and it's not that that's like a huge deal breaker, but you know what? Maybe it kind of is because I want someone who's gonna be like me. I wear my heart on my sleeve. Like as you know, I'm so not like that. Usually when I like a person, like everybody knows I fucking like them. Like almost probably too much. Like I probably scare the shit out of people with how quickly and how hard I love people. And I'm just like, I love you so much. And I was like, whoa, okay, like calm down. That's a lot. Especially for people like you where you're like, it's hard to vocalize like how you're feeling and it makes you uncomfortable. But yeah, I definitely have other vulnerable spots that make me really uncomfortable, but that's not one of them. I'm happy to talk about my partner and stand up for them and say how amazing they are. Um, and I think that's really
Right.
cool that you're learning that because that's all I want for you or for anyone I love or care about is just for you to be happy and for you to like genuinely be with a person who makes you happy and you guys support each other and grow and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, he's taught me so much about that specifically. Like if we're fighting and I'm like PMSing and I'm in the room just getting mad at him for everything and he has to leave, like me, I'll be like ear at the door, like waiting for him to say something so I can pounce on him. Like if he's telling Danny that like Carly's being a bitch or something. And he never would. He would leave and be like, oh, Carly's like, oh, she's not coming with me. She's not feeling well. I'll see it. And I'm like, he's just so he would never shit talk me, to anyone ever because what's the purpose? Like he never wants people to think that I'm being a bitch because he doesn't feel like I'm actually a bitch. He just like, knows that I'm in a mood. So he's not going to go like spread the good word of like, oh my God, Carly's so annoying. And that's how I always was like, and it's eye opening to watch him like, cause he just navigates relationships so well and he's had so many of them and like he communicates very well. And, it's helpful to see that because I'm such a person that like just immediately I go like talk about it and I'm like it doesn't need to be like that. I don't need to go spread this like you said initially it's just so much hotter and like so much I just respect people so much more when they are not saying bad things about their partner all the time behind their back. Like, what a horrible thing. I don't want anyone in my life to be with someone like that. I don't want Costa to be with someone like that. And I think opening my eyes to how I was and how much I've grown in this relationship is huge because I wouldn't, like, I love him so much. I would never want him to date me anymore. Like, that's not fair. He deserves someone that's, like, amazing and equally is in love with him and can voice it and can like sing it out loud, versus someone who's like avoidant and like, no, I'm too cool to like tell people how much I love you, because it's actually the opposite of that. I judge people that that are like that, because that was me, but also because I'm like, ugh, like why are you with
Right.
them then? Like, why are you talking to me about this? Like, you could just leave. And that's what your advice was, because it's like, that's accurate. Like, you could just, if you actually feel like this, just leave. But with him, it's such a different journey, because I've been like this, and then eventually like just up. And there's still like downs and ups, but it's been very different. And I think that's fine, totally fine. I'm not looking for anything that's like completely linear or different,
It's
because it
trending
just doesn't work
upward.
like that. And I'm happy, I think. Yeah. And I think like the times when you're really fighting, me and you too, those are the times when you grow so much from it. Like, you and I have had the most powerful moments together for sure, after like some screaming fights, or me having to come tell you how like I'm sorry, or how something you said hurts me. Like those uncomfortable conversations and those like low lows where you can give each other really valuable feedback is the way that your relationship gets better, and that you better each other
Right.
ultimately. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah.
that's so cool. I just want to share one story about like I tell this to a lot of people all the time, and you've probably heard me say this one, but it was actually really recent. And one of my like I don't want to say problems, like a challenge for me is vulnerability. So it's really easy for me to be like, oh my God, I love everyone. But for me to admit that I'm hurt, or like we were talking about, for me to admit that I did something wrong or I fucked up is like really challenging. So recently, I just loved this moment that we had in a car together. It was me, you, and Dad going to Costco. Like not this most recent visit, but maybe a few years ago. Um, but still, like recently. Like I was an adult when this happened. Um, but yeah, we were going to Costco, and I think you and Dad were like, I don't know, joking around in the front seat, and I get really sensitive that you guys are like being assholes to me. This is just a common theme for the listeners because it's just like a really deep childhood wound that I always thought Carly and my dad were like a team, and I was left out. So, anyways, this is like embarrassingly carried over until I was like 30. Um, I'm not embarrassed by it anymore, but back then I was like, oh, this is so shameful that I still have these like deep childhood wounds about being left out. But it was true, and I just felt like, the constant thing was you guys didn't get how sensitive I am, and then Dad would make fun of how sensitive I am, and I was like, that's so mean because I am sensitive, and so obviously it was like a spiral. But you said something that kind of stopped me in my tracks because I said something like I was just getting really angry, like, oh my God, you guys are being so mean to me, and you just turned around and you were like, Brittany, did we hurt your feelings? Like in a very genuine way. You're like, did we hurt your feelings? Because if we hurt your feelings, I'm really sorry. And I just was like, oh shit, like that. Like even when I'm talking about it, my heart starts beating really fast because I'm like, I'm so much more comfortable being pissed off and like, having this self-righteousness feeling and being like, oh, they're assholes and, woe is me. I feel so bad for myself. But really, you just kind of diffuse the situation by saying that. And it also just made me realize, like, yeah, I am hurt. My feelings are hurt. And I feel like such a loser for saying that. And like for that being the truth that I couldn't possibly imagine saying that to you guys in that moment because it's like such a vulnerable place to be in where it's like, yeah, you guys hurt my feelings. I almost couldn't even say it out loud. That's how hard it was for me. But after you said that, I really sat with that comment for a while. And it's obviously stuck with me years later. But I just realized, like, that's so amazing if we can just be honest about when someone else has hurt us or when we're feeling hurt or whatever. It's like such a diffuser of any like anger and really crazy emotions.
I just had mom in my head with her ouch.
Oh my God.
Something, anytime something hurts.
Ouch,
Ouch.
I feel a pinch.
I feel a pinch. No, I totally, yeah, I'm glad that that stuck with you. I think it's like the hardest thing for me too. And I was always like, I'm kind of surprised that it's still hard for you, honestly. And it like shows me a lot because you've done a lot more work in that area than me. And I think you've always just been a little bit like less cold, like more able to maybe admit that. Because yeah, for me, my response is fight. Like it's anger always. If my feelings are hurt, I'm fighting. Like I'm like, oh my God, I'm right back. Like I want to hurt you, right? As much as you hurt me. And but I don't even like I don't think it's actually conscious at all that I'm like hurt. I'm
Mm-hmm.
mad and I'm like gonna poke back because I'm
Mm-hmm.
angry. But then when it comes down to it, like Costa is the person I've worked through this with the most recently, but with you too, it's just like when I calm down, when I have the space to calm down, then I realize like, oh my God, like, that just hurt my feelings. I'm embarrassed by that because like I don't feel like I need that much attention. I don't want to be needy or like I don't want that to hurt my feelings. I want to be the cool girl that's like super chill and I don't actually care about that. But like realistically, I really care about that. Like that really hurt me, right? Or like that something that you could have never known would hurt me is like, oh, that comment really upset me because I have some wound or some trigger around that, which like, how could they know until you tell them like that hurt me? And then they're probably like, oh, sorry, that wasn't my
Right.
intention at all to hurt you because most of us aren't intending to hurt unless it's reactionary.
Yes.
But yeah, yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, so tough. It's still tough for me, but I think the only way, honestly, to learn through that is relationships. Like I don't it's like, yeah, I could do as much plant medicine work as I can and I could just be alone and do all these plant diets, but until I'm in a relational setting with somebody, whether it's you or my friends or a boyfriend, like that's where I learned that stuff. Because again, I can't just be sitting here against my bed like, oh, I'm gonna practice being vulnerable. It's like, good luck practicing that unless you're actually in a relationship. So I think that's why watching you, I'm like, I've learned from just watching
Totally.
you because I'm not in a relationship, haven't been for years, but yeah, it's cool learning from you and being like able to admit that I was wrong about things. Like, oh, I was wrong about this fairy tale feeling. I was wrong about butterflies being a really good sign of something good. Like maybe it's actually trauma. Maybe you feel at home with someone because your home was a toxic environment. Like these are not like
Right.
my Brittany romance mind. Yeah, just watching you through all of this stuff has actually really helped me and think of romance in a different way because you guys are super romantic. It's not like you're not romantic. It's not like you don't have that side. It's like very romantic and it just keeps getting more and more beautiful. But it didn't have that like chick flick Disney princess trope that I was obsessed with.
No, yeah.
So yeah, it's been a good lesson for me and I'm so happy for you and thanks for talking about that so openly because I think it's really cool for us to hear about like real
Yeah.
relationships.
Totally. Yeah, no, thank you. I feel the same way. Like I just, we keep getting more romantic because of all of the like hard shit that you actually have to go through, like what's real life and um I think yeah, for me too. It's even been hard in our relationship to drop the narrative that like something else isn't coming that's going to be like sweep me off my feet and Prince Charming and it's going to have like all the money and the perfect home and like I'm just going to be able to stay at home and water the plants and have a personal trainer, like all of these things where it's just like this model of life, it's like that's real. These thoughts are still real. Like it's not something that just goes away, but you're like, wait, like it's the same thing with the fucking
Yes.
bitchy voice. It's like, okay, wait, like that's not real life. Like sure, I can dream about that or like I can have like but do I even want that? Like is that the kind of person that I want or no, is like this person that loves me so much that like is extremely raw and there for me and like accepting of me. That's what I want. That's what I care about. I'd rather live in a shack, like, but that's again all the programming of life of like I want my Prince Charming and this perfect life and this mansion in Beverly Hills with whatever. Like, then you're like, wait, just again reprogramming. Like, no, that's actually not what I want. I just want someone who loves me and that I can like go do real shit with
Yes.
and talk about real shit with and like fully be myself and fart and burp and do all the things that like our real
Yes.
life, not be like scared or intimidated by anything because it's a real
Yeah.
um,
I love
relationship,
that so
right?
much. And
So
it's also
yeah,
really cool because all of those things could go at any point. That's something I've also learned from working at an ayahuasca center was seeing how many people have come because their whole lives have imploded or exploded or like fell apart or like all of these things can happen in life that we have zero control over. So let's say, and again, it's like back to the non-judgmental piece. Like there's nothing wrong with people wanting a relationship and finding a like if their priority is money, man with money, then like sure that's their priority and I'm not judging that, but it's cool to like
totally.
know what are your priorities because if you marry a man for money and then you're like, wait a second, I don't care about money if I'm not happy, if he doesn't love me, and then he loses everything then it's like, oh shit, we don't even have love. Like we don't have anything.
Right. Yeah. And you can learn your priorities, right? As you like as you learn them. Like that's how it is. You're not like I'm not sitting here being like these things matter to me, but as I develop in a relationship, I'm like, oh, actually, this is what matters. I don't care about all of these things that I thought were my like top 10 priorities. If I was to actually think
Hmm.
about them, don't really matter because like the more you can again reprogram against like, oh, you buy more and you'll be happy, and like, oh, if I actually buy less, I'll be happy, and then all I need is love for myself and for like other people around me. And that just puts everything into perspective, you know, but it is very easy to get sucked into the
It
rabbit hole.
totally is.
Um, Speaking of which, I have my hypnotherapy session in
Oh my
three
gosh.
minutes.
Okay, well,
So
have so much fun and thank you so much for joining. I love you unbelievably much to infinity and beyond. And I hope that we can have a part two because there's actually a lot of things I wanted to ask you about that we didn't get to.
yes, this was easier not looking at myself, so hopefully it wasn't
No.
awkward. I'm like not looking forward to watching or listening to this. But maybe honestly, if your video's all weird or if the audio's weird or something, like I'm happy to redo a lot of the
Okay.
things. But this was nice to just chat with
Yes.
you and to experience my first podcast
I
regardless.
love
So
it.
thank you for having me. I love you so much
Oh.
and um I'm so happy for you and I'm so happy to see you so happy. But I miss you so much and I can't believe I'm probably not going to see you until March.
Yeah.
But it's lovely to do this and I would love to do it
Okay, let's
again.
do it again.
And I love you so much. I'm so freaking grateful for you
Oh.
and your friendship and your
I love you
sisterhood.
so much. I'm obsessed with you. You can't do anything wrong. You're perfect. And have a good hypnotherapy session. I love
Yeah,
you. Bye.
thank you. I love you so much.